My fiancé, who had emotionally neglected me for 3 full years, proposed to his first love. At the most extravagant social gala the city had seen in a decade. Later, I sweetly announced on social media, "I'm getting married." That night, he called me. "Maria, I never said I was going to marry you." I chuckled, unbothered. "I never said you were the groom." Not long after, a series of photos went viral across the internet, shocking the entire city. In them, the man who held immense power in Hong Kong spread his arms wide, letting me fall into his embrace. Then he leaned down, letting me kiss him. This video is an original creation of the YouTube channel Romance Grove. Enjoy. When I stood up after putting on my gown, the makeup artist couldn't help but whisper in awe, "Miss Rivers, this dress looks stunning on you." I thanked her softly and pushed open the door. Only to hear a commotion downstairs. Through the grand golden revolving door stepped my fiancé of 3 years, David Green, arm in arm with a young, beautiful woman. Even more absurd? She was wearing the exact same dress as me. Tonight was a once-in-a-decade banquet in Hong Kong's elite circle. Everyone present stood at the very top of the social pyramid. Sharp-eyed and ruthless. Naturally, they could tell at a glance that my gown was merely a high-quality knockoff. In 21 years, this was the first time I had dressed up so formally. Turns out, I was just a joke in full makeup and costume. "David, the young lady beside you is?" someone asked with feigned innocence. David Green held the woman's hand and smiled. "My girlfriend, Rachel. Though after tonight, she'll be my fiancée." "What about Miss Rivers?" David glanced at me coldly. "The engagement between the Rivers and Green families is over. For the past 3 years, the Green family has shown more than enough generosity toward the Rivers." And he was right. If not for the $100 million betrothal gift at the beginning, the Rivers family would have gone bankrupt long ago. Could my parents and siblings still live their life of luxury without it? Then David knelt on one knee and presented a diamond ring to Rachel. She burst into tears, throwing herself into his arms. He gently wiped away her tears, kissing and comforting her. I watched as Rachel was surrounded by wives and daughters of powerful families, all fawning over her with warmth and flattery. After tonight, she would no longer be an insignificant actress or a homewrecker whispered about behind her back. And I, Maria Rivers, in this city, and in the Rivers family, would likely have no place left to stand. "Excuse me, could you move?" A voice sounded behind me. I turned around to see 2 young society women holding hors d'oeuvres, staring at me impatiently. I stepped aside. Her dress looked so cheap. Right? This kind of knockoff, who knows what fabric they used? Probably causes rashes. She still has the nerve to stand here? So embarrassing. Expressionless, I walked toward the lounge in the corner, pretending not to hear their malicious gossip. My phone buzzed. I answered, and my mother's furious voice exploded from the other end. "Maria, the Green family is breaking off the engagement, and they're demanding $50 million back from the dowry. You couldn't even keep a man's heart in 3 years, you useless girl. Figure it out yourself. The Rivers family isn't paying a single cent." Staring at the ended call, I felt as if my heart was suffocating. The dazzling lights and elegant crowd, none of it had anything to do with me. All I wanted was to get away. "Did you hear? Mr. Jones returned to Hong Kong yesterday. He might show up at the banquet tonight." "Unlikely. Mr. Jones almost never attends events like this." "True. The last time he appeared in public was on national news." Clutching at the dull ache in my chest, I opened my purse to get my medication. The rustling sound alerted the 2 people nearby. Their voices stopped abruptly, and their footsteps slowly faded away. The pain in my chest grew stronger. Spasming now, and the corset of my gown felt like it was strangling me. I didn't bother searching for the pills any longer. I tried to undo the hidden clasps, desperate for air. But no matter how I struggled, I couldn't manage to open them. Earlier today, Ms. Rivers had arranged for someone to do my nails. A delicate, intricate design. Beautiful to look at, yet in this critical moment, nearly fatal. I tilted my head up, gasping in small, shallow breaths. My long hair spilled messily across the deck, lips turning a ghostly gray. In the distance, the banquet had just begun. My ex-fiancé was probably dancing sweetly with his beloved. And I might quietly die here on the silent deck, without a sound. "Mr. Jones, would you like to go in now?" George Jones didn't answer. He merely took the cigarette case handed to him by his assistant. He pulled out a light gray cigarette, then opened a small ornate box. Without lighting it, he dipped the cigarette tip into the dark ochre spice powder within, then gently tapped it. Finally, he extended a hand. The assistant quickly offered a lighter. George lit the cigarette. "You all go ahead. I'll join you after I finish this." With that, George walked a few steps toward the railing of the deck. "It's windy here, please be careful." The people surrounding him knew better than to linger. They quietly withdrew, one by one. This return to Hong Kong was strategic. George was ready to take an even firmer hold of power. From this day on, if he spoke, no one in the city would dare to challenge him. Tonight's banquet had been meticulously orchestrated. The host had pulled every string to get him to show up. Originally, George had little interest. But ever since returning yesterday, his family elders had been pressuring him to get married. So he used this event as an excuse to escape. Yet he had only smoked half the cigarette when he noticed her, a frail, slender figure not far away. He instinctively stubbed out the cigarette and turned to leave. But just then, a muffled thud sounded on the deck behind him. George slowly turned back. In the dim moonlight, that figure lay collapsed on the wooden boards. Utterly helpless, heartbreakingly beautiful. My face must have been pale as death by then, skin tinted blue-white from lack of air. The moonlight draped over me, revealing features drained of beauty, slightly contorted in pain. When I looked up at the unfamiliar man, it was as if I had found a lifeline in a storm. I grabbed onto his sleeve with desperate strength. Survival instinct surged within me, and somehow I pulled his hand toward my chest. My breathing was erratic, heart rate spiraling into chaos. He gave me a sharp glance, as though he instantly understood what was happening. Then he knelt down on one knee, his long fingers grasping my wrist. His voice was low, steady, commanding. "Where's the zipper on your dress?" I couldn't speak. I grabbed his hand again and pressed it against my chest. He furrowed his dark brows, gently removed my hand, and glanced down toward the neckline of my dress. His fingers swiftly undid a long, concealed row of clasps. Suddenly, all the pressure vanished. The crushing tightness in my chest released. Air rushed in. I gulped it down greedily, breathing like I'd been underwater too long. But in that moment, I had completely forgotten. The dress I wore tonight clung tightly to my body. Underneath, I had only applied petal-shaped adhesive covers over my chest. Now, with the front of the dress completely undone, I had been exposed. Until a warm, heavy blazer draped over me. The scent of his body clinging to it. Only then did I snap back to my senses. Biting my lip for a long moment, I finally raised my head with a flush creeping across my face and whispered, "Thank you. Can you stand?" I nodded. Clutching his blazer with one hand, I used the railing for support and managed to stand. "Shall I call your family or a friend?" I quickly shook my head. "No need. I'll be fine after a bit of rest." His phone rang just then. I watched him step aside and answer. "I've already said, my marriage plans are my own. Don't worry. I won't let Grandpa leave this world with regrets." He sounded a little irritated. Lighting another cigarette, the faint glow outlined the sharp angles of his face. Suddenly, I realized, I had seen him somewhere before. And just then, he turned around, our eyes locking unexpectedly. I quickly lowered my gaze. He ended the call and walked back toward me, the scent of tobacco lingering. I coughed softly, uncomfortable. "Apologies." He snuffed out the cigarette like a gentleman. Then pointed toward his blazer on me. "You can hand the coat to a staff member later." My face instantly turned red again. I nodded, replying in a small voice, "Okay." His gaze dropped to my fingers. I was still gripping the lapels of his blazer tightly. Beneath it, my dress had fallen open. My chest, covered only by the thin silicone pasties, was pressed against the fine lining of his jacket. It was an intimacy no one else could see, but I was acutely aware of it. Feeling flustered, I shifted slightly, hunching forward. Just as he was about to turn away, I spoke in a soft voice. "Earlier, I heard your phone call. Can I propose a deal?" I looked up at him, summoning all my courage. Maybe he needed a wife. Someone quiet, someone who wouldn't cause trouble, someone who could disappear when needed. And I needed 50 million to buy my pitiful freedom. A deal? He looked at me. What kind of deal does Miss Rivers want to make with me? I was far too nervous to realize. He actually knew my full name. "Do you, perhaps, need a wife?" I mustered all my courage and met his eyes. "I won't cause you any trouble. I'll do everything I can to cooperate. Of course, if you no longer need me, I'll walk away without a word." Under the moonlight, he looked at me quietly. A silver-gray shirt and dark trousers wrapped around a lean, upright frame. His eyes were calm, but the lines of his jaw were sharp as blades. I glanced at the watch on his wrist. It alone could probably buy the entire luxury yacht we were standing on. "What are your terms?" I hesitated, then opened my mouth slowly, embarrassed. "I need 50 million. "What for?" I lowered my lashes, avoiding his gaze. But in front of a stranger, I somehow found the strength to lay bare all my shame and helplessness. "My fiancé is breaking off the engagement. He's demanding we return half the dowry, 50 million. I don't have it." "Breaking off the engagement?" He looked at me suddenly, his gaze turning razor sharp. "Yes," I said with a faint laugh, lifting my face to the wind. The sea breeze tangled my long hair as I stared blankly into the darkness. I have nowhere else to go, sir. I accept your deal, he said. But I have one condition. I looked up in disbelief. Sir? We register the marriage within 3 days. So soon? You heard the call earlier. My grandfather's health is failing. He's desperate to see his grandson's bride walk through the door. He raised a brow as he looked at me. Is that inconvenient? I shook my head at once. No, not at all. Then it settled. The wind picked up. My hair blew across my face in wild tangles. He suddenly stepped closer and tucked a stray strand behind my ear. I'll send someone to pick you up the day after tomorrow. But, how will you know where to find me? He didn't answer. When he pulled his hand away, I thought I felt his fingertips brush against my cheek. Or maybe, it was just my imagination. He walked away, and long after he left, I was still standing there, trapped in a dream too surreal to believe. Until David, reeking of alcohol, suddenly appeared and grabbed my wrist. Maria, he slurred, for 3 years, I've been waiting for you to bow your head. Just once. If you had just acted like those other women, if you'd begged. Forget 100 million, I'd give your family 1 billion. You're drunk, David. I shoved him away with force. But drunk men are never easy to deal with. His eyes were bloodshot, staring at me, and then at the blazer wrapped around me. Whose clothes are you wearing? That's none of your business, David. None of my business? His handsome face twisted in anger. Maria, I want to see, who the hell dares lay a finger on my woman? He grabbed the blazer on me and yanked it off. I tried to hold it tight, but it was no use. The sea breeze roared, and under the pale moonlight, the front of my gown flared open like white waves. Maria, David murmured, stunned. Then, a shrill female voice pierced the silence. Maria. You shameless tramp. Oh my God, she's practically undressing herself to seduce someone else's fiancé. Look at Mr. Green, he's completely entranced. Rachel, take notes, this is another level. I snapped back to my senses, frantically trying to cover my chest. But Rachel had already rushed toward me, tears streaming, her hand raised to slap me. What's going on here? A calm but commanding male voice rang out. Rachel's hand froze in midair. In the next second, David pulled her aside. I staggered back and hurriedly raised my arms to shield myself. The crowd turned at the sound of the voice. Someone gasped, it's Mr. Jones. Which Mr. Jones? Who else? George. Mr. George Jones. My eyes widened slowly as I looked past the crowd. To the man who had undone my suffocating dress just moments ago on the deck. The man to whom I had offered a deal, 50 million in exchange for marriage. That man was none other than the infamous George Jones. He glanced at me briefly, then looked away. He turned to his assistant and murmured something in a low voice. The assistant immediately stepped through the crowd, walked up to me, and gently draped the blazer back over my shoulders. Miss Rivers, let me take you downstairs to rest. I nodded stiffly and thanked her. As she helped me walk away, I couldn't resist glancing back. The crowd had gone quiet, everyone now standing in solemn, reverent silence. Mr. Jones, this was all just a misunderstanding. David's voice had sobered considerably, trembling slightly. What misunderstanding? George's voice remained steady, calm, not a trace of anger. I stopped walking, lingering at the corner. The assistant didn't urge me. She simply waited quietly and patiently beside me. David's voice trembled slightly. Rachel came with me. She's my girlfriend. She must have misunderstood the situation, that's why she lost control. George's gaze darkened, and a trace of displeasure appeared. I don't believe any true lady in Hong Kong's social circles would behave so disgracefully. David looked utterly embarrassed. Rachel, on the verge of tears, stood frozen in shame. George turned to his assistant. Escort this young lady off the yacht. David, Rachel cried as she clung to his sleeve, refusing to let go. Having spent years in the entertainment industry, she knew exactly how serious this was. Being kicked out like this would spread through Hong Kong by morning. She'd become the city's laughingstock, her career beyond saving. Mr. Jones, Rachel realizes her mistake. Please, give her another chance. George gave David a cool glance. You're welcome to accompany her off the yacht, young master of the Green family. David fell silent. After a moment, he withdrew his hand. Rachel was swiftly escorted away. The rest of the guests on the deck quietly dispersed. No one had expected such a dramatic farce to end so abruptly. Mr. Jones. The female assistant's voice pulled me from my daze. Startled, I turned and saw George walking toward me. He waved his hand, dismissing the assistant, and asked gently, Maria, are you all right? Did that scare you? I shook my head, still stunned. And no. I'm fine. Let me take you back to rest. He reached out and gently took hold of my wrist. Is that okay? Dizzy, I nodded without thinking and let him lead me forward. But after just a few steps, I suddenly felt a chill on my chest. I froze. A nude-colored petal-shaped silicone poteye had slipped out from beneath the blazer and fallen to the floor. George turned, his gaze following mine to the small object. I was so mortified, I nearly wanted to bang my head against the wall. But he remained perfectly composed. He bent down, picked it up, folded it in half, and tucked it carefully into his trouser pocket. Then, as if nothing had happened, he offered softly, "It's dirty now, you shouldn't reuse it. I'll have clean clothes sent to you later." My face flushed a deep red. All I could manage was a faint, embarrassed "Let's go," he said again, taking my hand once more. The corridor wasn't long. We reached the lounge quickly. He saw me inside, then left for other matters. I sat alone for a while, letting the silence calm me. And only then did it dawn on me. George had called me Miss Rivers at first. But just now, he'd called me Maria. He knew my name? He knew who I was? Soon, the assistant returned with clean clothes. I took a shower and changed into fresh attire. Then I carefully folded George's blazer and placed it in a bag, intending to have it dry cleaned before returning it. Mr. Jones instructed that if Miss Rivers wishes to go home, I am to escort you personally. The female assistant looked to be in her mid-30s. Sharp, capable, and direct. "Please also let Mr. Jones know I'll have the blazer cleaned and return it later." "There's no need, Miss Rivers. Just leave it to me." I didn't argue. Handing her the bag, I asked casually, "By the way, how did Mr. Jones know my name?" She merely smiled, lips pressed politely together. "That's Mr. Jones's private business." As I stepped off the yacht, a text lit up my phone from an unknown number. "Maria, this is George. Save my number." I stared at it for a while before replying, "Got it. Saved. I'll come pick you up the day after tomorrow. Get some rest these next 2 days." "Okay." He didn't text again. By the time I returned to the Rivers family estate, it was deep into the night. But no one was asleep. The house was brightly lit, the atmosphere heavy with tension. As soon as I walked in, my mother shot up from the sofa. "Maria, have you figured out a solution? What exactly did you do to upset the young master of the Green family and make him call off the engagement?" "She's right, Maria. You know we rely on the Green family to keep our business afloat. Where are we going to find 50 million now? Your sister-in-law is about to have her 3rd child. Do you want us all dead?" Everyone was shouting. Blaming me for failing to keep David's heart, for not marrying smoothly into the Green family. So they could continue feeding off me like parasites. But back when they chose to marry me off to save the family. Because my older sister was healthy and they couldn't bear to give her up. Had anyone asked if I was willing? When they took that $100 million dowry from the Green family. To cover their debts and maintain their lavish lives, did I ever enjoy a single cent? And now, with the engagement broken and 50 million to return, none of them would pay a dime. They expected me to shoulder it all alone. Fine. I'll bear it. But once I do, I will no longer be part of the Rivers family. "Maria, say something." My sister-in-law stood and nudged me impatiently. "I've already thought of a way to get the 50 million. "You really found a way?" I saw my mother's eyes light up instantly. "But, it may come at the cost of the Rivers family's reputation." "What do you mean by that?" I smiled faintly. At tonight's banquet, I met a wealthy businessman from the Philippines. After learning of my situation, he offered to pay the 50 million for me. But he's married, with children. So I can only be his mistress. I had no choice. I agreed. But since we'll be seen in public together, our relationship won't stay a secret for long. You'd stoop so low. That's shameless, Maria. The Rivers family is a family of scholars. Our ancestors were respected officials. If you become someone's mistress, you'll shame us for generations. Then what do you suggest? Why don't you sell some of the family assets to repay the Green family? No one spoke. The room went dead silent. Maria. At last, my father spoke. The Green family's 50 million must be returned. But we can't tarnish the Rivers family name. I gave a cold laugh. Then just disown me. My sister-in-law muttered, hand on her belly, well, at least she knows her place. Here's what we'll do, my father decided. The Rivers family would place a public notice announcing they had severed ties with me. But only for appearances. I would still be their daughter. They wouldn't actually cut me off. But I knew better. This was just a trick to appease me. Once the 50 million was paid, they'd throw me out without a second thought. Exactly what I wanted. As long as the 50 million reached the Green family, I would be immediately kicked out. But what they didn't know was, that was exactly what I wanted. At 9 a.m. the next morning, I received a call from George. Maria, check your text messages. The money should have arrived. I quickly opened my phone, and sure enough, 10 minutes ago, the funds had been deposited. I've received it. You'll be handling the annulment today. I'll send a driver to pick you up. George, could I ask a favor? Go ahead. Could you not let anyone else know we're getting married? At least for now. I didn't want those greedy leeches in the Rivers family to latch onto George and cause him any unnecessary trouble. You don't want people to know? No, it's just temporary. Is that okay? All right. I'll arrange someone else to pick you up. After returning the $50 million to David and having the Rivers family publish a statement cutting ties with me, I would support George whether he chose to announce our marriage or keep it private. By then, since the family had already officially disowned me, they wouldn't be able to reach George, no matter how hard they tried. After transferring the money to David, I took a photo of the transaction receipt for my records. Just as David called, I saw the announcement in the classified section of the newspaper, Rivers family publicly severing all ties with me. I stared at those few lines of print, reading them over and over again. Then I took another picture and carefully folded the newspaper away for safekeeping. David's voice came through, raspy and strained. Maria, where did you get the money? $50 million isn't a small amount. The Rivers family doesn't have it. Who gave it to you? Tell me the truth. That's none of your concern. You've received the money, so from now on, we're completely done. I was about to hang up when David suddenly called out my name. Maria, you think this is about the $50 million? Whatever your reason, it no longer has anything to do with me. Maria, you need to understand, if I say the word, no man in all of Hong Kong will dare marry you. I chuckled lightly into the phone. Oh, is that so? If you don't believe me, feel free to try. I didn't want to waste another word on him and ended the call. It hadn't even been a second when the phone rang again. I was about to block the number, until I saw the caller ID, George. The Rivers family, they've disowned you. How do you know that? I was surprised. George's intel was almost too fast. Maria. If it hurts, you don't have to pretend it doesn't. I truly hadn't planned on crying, really. After all these years, I had grown used to it. So used to it, it barely registered anymore. I'm not sad, I whispered. But somehow, when someone genuinely shows they care, people tend to become more fragile. So the moment I opened my mouth, my voice was already trembling. Maria, you can cry in front of me. After all. Starting tomorrow, I'll be your husband. Tears spilled from my eyes before I could stop them. But before you become my husband, I already gave you another identity. What identity? I whispered shyly into the phone. George was silent for about half a minute, then finally said, so right now, I'm a 60-year-old Chinese-Filipino tycoon, and you're my mistress? Are you angry? There was a faint sigh from the other end. Maria, I'll see you tomorrow. You still want to register our marriage? I could tell, just now, he had been a little upset. Get a good rest today. Tomorrow, wear your most beautiful dress. George must have arranged everything in advance. The entire marriage registration process went smoothly and quickly. After we got our certificate, he took me to the hospital. He held my hand the whole time, making us appear deeply in love. His grandfather was gravely ill. He managed a faint smile at me, clearly comforted by the sight. My heart twinged with guilt. We were deceiving a man at the end of his life. He must have deeply loved his outstanding grandson, hoping he'd find happiness in marriage. But he didn't know, I wasn't truly George's wife. After leaving the hospital, George had an important meeting and asked his driver to take me home to pack. The driver had been with the Jones family for decades. He'd watched George grow up, and though his hair had turned silver, his posture remained upright. When the Rivers family saw him step out and open the car door for me, they all immediately assumed, he must be the man supporting me financially. Disdainful of my new mistress status, not a single one of them greeted me. I went upstairs to pack my suitcase. Only my father spoke to me. This is just temporary. You'll move out for a while. Maria, once the storm passes, we'll bring you back. I looked at him with innocent eyes and asked, how long will that take? That depends on how things unfold. Then you have to keep your word. Don't worry. As I rolled my suitcase out the door, I could clearly feel a collective sigh of relief from everyone in the Rivers family. The driver took me to George's private residence. It wasn't large, but the surroundings were serene and peaceful. There weren't many servants either, which actually made me feel relaxed. Madam, Mr. Jones instructed that you should feel completely at home. He'll return tonight. But at 8 p.m. I got a call from George. He had to attend an urgent meeting on the mainland and wouldn't be back for about a week. If you get bored, go shopping or grab tea with friends. Don't stay cooped up inside all day. Then I'll go stay at my little apartment for a few days. It's closer to Central, makes everything easier. I'll pick you up there when I return. Okay. On the third day of George's trip, a volunteer I used to work with called me. She invited me to a small charity auction hosted by some society ladies. The theme caught my attention. It was for children with congenital heart defects. When I arrived, I saw quite a few familiar faces, including Rachel. Though Rachel was, as usual, dressed to the nines, it was obvious she looked worse for wear. Seems that being kicked off the yacht that day had affected her more than I'd expected. Rachel spotted me as well. She let out a sneer, then turned to whisper to the person next to her. Is it true? She's become some rich man's mistress? Of course it's true. Even her parents were so ashamed they severed ties in the newspaper. Haven't you read it? Word is, her sugar daddy's nearly 80, old enough to be her grandfather. Oh my God. How could they let someone like her attend a charity event? Seriously, we shouldn't be associating with people like that. She should be asked to leave. The room gradually descended into whispers and discontent. The socialite who'd invited me looked mortified. Maria, maybe you could join us next time instead. I didn't want to make things difficult for her, so I stood up and prepared to leave. But just as I reached the door, I ran into David. Maria. I ignored him and continued walking. But David grabbed my wrist. You came to find me? I pulled my hand free. No, I didn't. I just heard about what happened to you. David blocked my way again. Maria, return the money. Why? I let out a cold laugh. Wasn't it you who asked for the 50 million? Maria. David's face darkened. I told you, as long as you gave in just once. How exactly should I give in? I shoved him aside again. Should I kneel like a dog, thanking you for your mercy? Funny, really, no one knew that the seemingly gentlemanly young master of the Green family was, in private, a man who loved to use wealth and power to trample others at will. My life might not be worth much, but I still had my pride. I wasn't about to grovel just to be humiliated. Maria, your reputation's already in shambles. You should think twice about the consequences of your actions. David changed the subject. You're still young, yet you've chosen to be someone's mistress. You've ruined your name for life. That was my own choice. I'm giving you a way out, Maria. Are you? I don't need it. I walked around him and headed for the exit. His voice called out behind me, low and sharp, Maria, I'm only giving you one chance. When you've thought it through, come find me. I didn't look back. But that very night, my landlord called. He ordered me to move out immediately. I didn't argue. I quietly packed a few essentials and headed downstairs. What I didn't expect, George's car was already waiting for me outside. His driver stepped out to take my suitcase. Madam, Mr. Jones sent me to bring you home. George, has he come back? Mr. Jones will be flying in first thing tomorrow morning. My eyes suddenly felt hot. His work, is it all done? We'd said it would be a week, and today was only the 4th day. Mr. Jones was worried you'd feel wronged. He couldn't rest easy. I'm fine. His work matters more. He shouldn't delay it for me. But as I sat in the car, my mind was a mess. I couldn't even begin to describe the emotions swirling inside me. It was like, after being abandoned by the entire world, someone suddenly handed me a gold mine. When I arrived at George's home and just stepped into my room, my phone rang. Maria, George's voice was laced with fatigue. Guilt immediately welled up in me. To escape the Rivers family, I had purposely tarnished my own name like this. George was already so exhausted from work, and yet I still caused him trouble from afar. If I had just quietly stayed at his house, none of this would have happened. George, I'm sorry. Maria, he sounded a little helpless. I never blamed you. Let's talk tomorrow when I get back, alright? After we hung up, I received a friend request on WeChat. It was from George. I accepted it. His Moments feed had only one post, shared 3 days ago. Just a single photo. Our marriage certificate. I couldn't see what anyone had commented beneath it. Only 2 of George's replies to his friends were visible. Yes, we're married. Let me introduce her, my wife, Maria. That night, I posted a WeChat update of my own. Just 4 simple words, getting married soon. Many friends messaged me, some even called. But when I picked up, it was David's voice on the other end. What, finally come to your senses? I said I'd give you one chance, but I never said I'd marry you. I couldn't help but laugh. Did I say you were the groom? You're going to marry that old man? Maria, how can you stoop so low, willing to become a married man's mistress? I hung up and blocked him. That night, my heart felt like it was carrying too much. I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. It wasn't until nearly dawn that I finally drifted off. I didn't even hear George come home. When I opened my eyes, I saw a figure stepping out of the bathroom. I nearly screamed, my heart practically leaping out of my chest. It's me, Maria. It's George. Don't be scared. I pressed my hand to my pounding heart, still pale from the shock. George pulled me into his arms, gently stroking my back. Just breathe, slowly. Don't panic. Relax. You're okay now, Maria. I rested against his chest for a while before finally calming down. And only then did I suddenly realize. I was wearing nothing but a silk nightdress, and George, having just stepped out of the shower, was bare-chested with only a pair of lounge pants on. I'm all right now, I said softly, face flushed, as I gently pulled away from his embrace. Sorry I scared you. George reached out to smooth my tousled hair. You slept so long. What happened? I had trouble falling asleep last night. I shifted uncomfortably. The fabric of my nightdress was thin, and I never wore a bra to bed. He had just held me tightly in his arms, with only a whisper of silk between us. My face felt like it was burning. I gripped the blanket, trying to wrap it around myself, only to realize it might make things more awkward. Just as I was at a loss for what to do, George guided me back down into bed. Get some more sleep. It's almost noon anyway, we'll just have lunch instead. He naturally pulled the blanket up to cover me. I'm heading to the study. I'll come get you later. Only after watching him walk out did I finally breathe a sigh of relief. During the day, it was fine. He spent most of his time working in the study. But at 9 that night, when he returned to the master bedroom, it was clear he didn't plan on leaving. I had considered the matter of consummating our marriage. After all, I was the one who promised to cooperate with all his needs. I watched George step out of the bathroom. After a long moment of hesitation, I asked softly, Are you sleeping here tonight? George glanced at me but didn't respond. My mind was in chaos. Maybe all he needed was a wife in name only. Maybe I was just overthinking it. I picked up my pillow and tried tentatively, then. I'll sleep in the guest room. Still, no response. I turned around with my pillow and took a few steps toward the door, only to be pulled back into a tight embrace. Didn't you say you'd fully cooperate with my needs? Jones? Mr. Jones? My back pressed tightly against his firm chest. I could feel his heart beating, strong and fast. His skin radiated heat, it was rising, searing into me, making me dizzy. George lowered his head and brushed my hair aside from the nape of my neck. Maria, you're my wife now. Leaning into his arms, I closed my eyes. My entire body softened as he carried me back to the bed. When he leaned down to kiss me, I clutched tightly at his forearm. My heart was racing, and for a moment, I felt like I couldn't breathe. His kiss, too, became scattered and breathless. If anything feels uncomfortable, tell me. George gently touched my flushed cheek. Only when my heartbeat settled did he continue. There were several moments where I truly thought I was going to pass out. But each time, George restrained himself and paused just in time. I could feel the muscles in his arms trembling from the effort. Sweat dripped from his forehead, landing on my chest, scalding hot. His heart was pounding. His breathing, rapid and ragged. I was overwhelmed, but somehow, he seemed even more overwhelmed than I was. Maria. His voice was hoarse. He lowered his head and kissed my cheek. Do you feel better now? I shook my head, then nodded. My vision was blurred, and my hands were already wrapped tightly around his neck. It was half resistance, half surrender. His eyes were full of desire. For one fleeting moment, I even had the illusion that George might actually like me. Maria, he murmured again, leaning in deeper. At the very end, I think I lost consciousness for a few seconds. But it wasn't painful like during my illness. Instead, it felt as though I were floating, wrapped in soft clouds. Until George gently woke me. Maria, are you all right? Does anything hurt? I shook my head again and quietly reached out to wrap my arms around his waist. There's something about a woman's first man that brings a natural sense of attachment. George held me close. Rest for a while. Then we'll take a bath. As he spoke, his fingers gently brushed over my chest. Is your heart uncomfortable? I'm okay. I recalled those moments when he paused midway, and couldn't help but ask softly, George, does it make you uncomfortable too? He cupped my face and kissed me, voice low and rough. If you keep asking, I really will feel uncomfortable. No more. All right, no more, he said, but didn't let go. I just want to kiss you, Maria. I stopped speaking, obediently letting him kiss me. My mind was a fog. But one thought kept circling. The way he called my name, Maria, sounded so tender, almost like a pampering endearment. But George was such a serious and restrained man. He'd probably only call me that like this when we were in bed. I never got the chance to test that theory. Because the next morning, he left early again. I knew how busy he was. At his level, there were always a million things to handle. So I stayed home, quietly, trying my best not to cause any more trouble. Even without going out, the days were peaceful. For the first time in my 21 years, I felt what it was like to live in tranquil happiness. No fear of being treated like a commodity by my family. No more heartache over favoritism or neglect. I didn't have to think about anything, just do what made me happy. I even started playing piano again, after years of abandoning it. Bought an online painting course, and began learning to paint in oils. I stayed home for about a week like that. Then one afternoon, George suddenly called. He said there was a banquet that evening he wanted me to attend. He had already prepared the gown and jewelry, and a styling team would arrive at the house shortly. Will you be there tonight? I asked. I'll come find you as soon as I finish work. What kind of banquet is it? Is it something I have to go to? It's a charity gala to support children with congenital heart disease. I thought you'd want to attend. My heart stirred. The last charity event I had missed, after Rachel maliciously spread rumors, had also been for children with heart defects. So George had remembered that. Because I was born with a weak heart, I had always paid special attention to such causes. Even after getting engaged to David, I still volunteered like clockwork every month, visiting sick or disabled children at the welfare center. David once sneered, "You're pretty good at pretending to be virtuous." But he never knew, I wasn't doing it for show. I had suffered through it myself, so I simply wanted to help more children like me. George, of course I'd love to attend. But if you come tonight, we won't be able to keep this a secret anymore. What I really wanted to ask was, would that trouble you? Would it cause any negative consequences? Maria, from the very beginning, the one who wanted to keep it private was you, not me. George, I clutched my phone, murmuring softly, I don't quite understand, why? Why did you agree? Why did you never once try to hide the fact that we got married? Why, was it me? I'll answer you when we get home tonight. When I arrived at the banquet, I was immediately met with countless curious and judgmental stares. What puzzled me was, since George was attending this charity event, it was clearly a high-profile one. The Green family had the stature to be here, but the Rivers family definitely didn't. And yet, David was here. So were the Rivers family. When I entered, the Rivers family members were clustered around David with excitement. And my full-blooded sister, Anna Rivers, was gazing at him with a bashful, burning look. Maria, you've got the nerve to show your face here? Anna exclaimed in disbelief. As soon as she spoke, Ms. Rivers walked over with a cold expression. Maria, don't you know what kind of event this is? You coming here and making a scene, what do you expect people to think of the Rivers family? I looked at the elegant, dignified woman before me and felt nothing but stillness in my heart. Didn't we already publish the announcement cutting ties? So I have nothing to do with the Rivers family anymore. Even if I make a scene, it won't stain your name. But you still carry the Rivers surname. Everyone in Hong Kong knows you're my daughter. Then what do you suggest? Maria, leave Hong Kong. Have your sugar daddy take you abroad. Or go back to the Philippines. Didn't Dad promise that once the scandal passed, I could come back? Ms. Rivers looked at me like I was insane. What fantasy are you living in? Your name's already been erased from the Rivers family genealogy. Really? Of course. So legally and even by blood, I have nothing to do with the Rivers family anymore. That's right. Good. I turned and addressed the room. I trust you all heard what Ms. Rivers just said. Maria, just go already. Why make this so embarrassing? Anna chimed in, pretending to be gentle. The young master of the Green family is here, don't make us all a laughingstock. David suddenly spoke up as well. Maria, didn't you say you were getting married? The young master of the Green family? He's got a wife and kids in the Philippines, mistresses all over the world. He'd never actually marry her. So your post the other day, was it fake? I opened my mouth to respond, but David had already stepped forward and grabbed my arm. Maria, let me ask you again. Before he could finish, the banquet hall suddenly fell silent. Mr. Jones is here. What? Why would Mr. Jones come to such a small banquet? How would I know? But wow, what a night, seeing Mr. Jones in person. Wait, why is Mr. Jones walking this way? Oh my God, he's looking straight over here. Is he looking at the eldest Miss Rivers? As the whispers grew louder, Anna's face flushed a deep red. Even Ms. Rivers couldn't hide her excitement. I turned to look at George. He was still dressed in a sharp black business suit, appearing as distant and imposing as ever. And in that moment, I felt a strange wave of unreality. The man I had only ever seen on TV and in the papers was now my husband. He had kissed me countless times. He called me Maria. And toward me, he was truly gentle, like the best kind of husband. Maria, George said aloud. It was the first time he had spoken my name in public. Not the formal Maria, but a tender, intimate Maria. The smile froze awkwardly on Anna's face. This video is an original work of the YouTube channel Romance Grove and is published exclusively on this channel. Please don't re-upload or share it on other channels. Ms. Rivers stood there stunned. David looked completely bewildered. I yanked my arm from David's grasp, my reddened eyes brimming with unshed tears. George. He walked straight through the crowd and stopped before me. The dress looks beautiful on you. And the makeup suits you too. You look stunning. George, I wanted to cry and laugh at the same time. Just as my tears were about to fall, George wrapped me in his arms in front of everyone. There. I was only a few minutes late, and they already started bullying you. As he said the word bullying, his cold gaze swept indifferently over the crowd. Ms. Rivers went pale, and Anna instinctively stepped behind her. George's eyes finally landed on David. Young master of the Green family, what were you just discussing with my wife? That word, wife, was like a bomb dropped in the room. The once silent guests immediately erupted in hushed, uncontrollable chatter. David, still in disbelief, stammered, wife? Yes. Maria is my wife, George replied flatly. As soon as he said that, Ms. Rivers suddenly snapped out of her daze and rushed over, grabbing my arm affectionately. Maria, darling, how could you keep such a big joyful event from your mother? I pushed her hand away. Ms. Rivers, I'm no longer a member of the Rivers family. Ms. Rivers froze. We're mother and daughter, there's no such thing as overnight grudges. We just need to talk things out. There's nothing to talk about. I have no ties with the Rivers family. The family records prove it. Ms. Rivers was sweating profusely now. She looked desperately toward George. Mr. Jones, please understand, Maria's still just a child. She's throwing a tantrum at her own mother. I listened to my wife. George pulled me close, his voice cool. If Maria says she has no ties with the Rivers family, then she doesn't. Mr. Jones, Ms. Rivers looked utterly devastated. Ms. Rivers, George suddenly said, to my knowledge, the Rivers family hasn't donated a single cent to charity in the past 10 years. At his words, Ms. Rivers broke into a cold sweat, frozen and unable to respond. So they haven't donated at all? Then why do they fight so hard to get into every charity gala? To look good in public. Shameless. Humiliated, Ms. Rivers could no longer remain. She left with Anna in tow, both fleeing in disgrace. George wrapped an arm around me. Maria, let's go home. But we haven't donated to the children yet. I whispered a reminder. George leaned down and kissed my forehead. My assistant has already taken care of it. George, I think my heart is failing. The room swayed around me. I felt a wave of dizziness hit. That all too familiar lack of oxygen. I gripped his arm tightly and turned my face to the side, gasping for air. George bent down, pressing his forehead gently against mine. Maria. I could feel how pained he was in that moment. And yet, my body betrayed me again. George, maybe you should marry someone healthy. Maria. His gaze held a rare sternness. There are plenty of healthy women in the world. But someone like me? What about you? He interrupted, gently brushing away the damp hair on my forehead. Maria, to me, you're the best there is. George. If your health is poor, we'll take it slow, treat it gently. If Hong Kong can't help, we'll go to Beijing or Shanghai. Or abroad. And if I still can't be cured? George leaned down and kissed me softly. Then I'll become celibate and devote myself to philosophy and statecraft. When the new year approached, George finally found some free time. He took me to Beijing. Word was, the top cardiac surgeons were all there now. I was nervous before the examination. All we can do is our best, and let fate take care of the rest, George said, smoothing my hair like he always did. Go on. I'll be right here waiting. After a thorough round of tests, the elderly doctor with snow-white hair looked at me with a sigh. I've reviewed your reports. Among congenital heart disease patients, your case is actually mild. If you had undergone surgery when you were a child, you'd have recovered long ago. I stared at him in disbelief, shaking my head. Doctor, you must be mistaken. My family always told me my condition was untreatable. They took me to so many hospitals. Everyone said the same thing. Eventually, I stopped going. I couldn't bear to hear myself sentenced to death again and again. They told me the only way to survive was to be carefully protected. That growing up at all was a miracle only possible thanks to them. When George pulled me into his arms, I realized my face was soaked with tears. They lied to me, didn't they? Why would they lie? Why would they do this to me? If they didn't want to pay for treatment, they could have abandoned me, given me away. Why lie to me for all these years? Maria, George murmured, don't think about that anymore. What matters is, you can be healthy now. That's what's important, do you understand? I just can't understand why. George hugged me tighter. Then don't dwell on what no longer matters. Look ahead. Don't look back. When spring came, George came to take me home to Hong Kong. I'd been discharged and was recovering well. His grandfather had fallen gravely ill days before, so George had returned to Hong Kong overnight to be with him. Only when the old man pulled through again did George finally breathe easy. It had been half a month since we'd last seen each other. George stepped out of the car, but he didn't come to me. We had made a promise before. That when we met again, I would run into his arms, like any healthy girl would. He held out his arms. I lifted my skirt and ran down the steps, through the tender green of the garden, carried by the breeze of spring. For the first time in 21 years, I ran, truly ran. Even the lingering chill of spring felt warm. I flung myself into his embrace. Tipped my head up for a kiss. But I was wearing flat shoes, and George was simply too tall. So I stood on my toes. And he lowered his head to meet me halfway. We had been married for almost a year. But that night was the first time I saw him let go of all restraint. He kissed the scar on my chest, the mark left by surgery, still raw and unsightly. I tried to cover it with my hand, not wanting him to see. But George wouldn't let me. Is it ugly? I asked. It's as beautiful as you were that night. So you've been eyeing me from the beginning? No, he smirked. Much earlier than you think. When? Have you seen me before? Maria, he said huskily, do you really want to reminisce with your husband, at a moment like this? George pinned my hands and lowered his head again. George, I feel dizzy. I can't breathe. I played my usual trick. He didn't believe me, of course. But still, he stopped, even in the most intense moment. My heart pounded fast, but there was no pain, no stabbing, no tearing. What surged in my chest was not suffering, but overwhelming desire. I wrapped myself around him, gently biting his chin. George, you don't have to be so careful with me anymore. From now on, do whatever you want. I'd seen George look stern and serious while giving a keynote speech at the Bay Area conference. Seen him lead multinational meetings in fluent English, French, and Cantonese. At home, he could be casual and easygoing. Even the housemaids dared to joke with him. But once he put on a serious face, everyone around him would fall silent. And now, his eyes held clear desire and intense possessiveness. He let himself fall into passion, and with me, drowned in earthly pleasures. In those endless waves of ecstasy, he seemed even more unrestrained than I was. I used to wonder how my own family could be so cruel. Later, I understood. All the pain and injustice I had endured over those 21 years, was simply to lead me to George. George, do you? It was the first time I ever asked. Before I could finish, George seemed to know what I wanted to say. His lips brushed against my ear. His hands, warm and insistent, tightened around me. I heard his voice, hoarse and low, intoxicating. Maria, I'm in love with you. Extra chapter, George's perspective. When Maria was 16, she often volunteered on weekends and during holidays. Most girls her age were going through an awkward phase due to puberty, but Maria had already blossomed into someone exceptionally beautiful. Perhaps because of her illness, she was always a bit withdrawn, making her all the more out of place among her peers. The first time George saw her, he was accompanying his grandfather to church for prayer. She was volunteering that day, leading a group of children from the welfare center in a choir performance. As the children sang, she sat at the piano in a white dress, accompanying them with grace. When it was time to take a group photo afterward, she was supposed to stand in the center, but someone pushed her to the side. She didn't argue or resist, just quietly stood at the far end of the back row and posed for the picture. No one would have noticed such a minor incident, but George's grandfather unexpectedly said to him, "See that young girl at the piano? So composed for someone her age." Because of that, George looked at her a few more times. At the time, he was 24, ambitious and determined to make something of himself. His heart was focused solely on work, leaving no room for distractions. All she left behind was a faint impression. She looked lovely in a dress. The second time he saw her was at her engagement ceremony with David. The Green family had extended several invitations due to their connection with George's grandfather, so he went to show respect. That day, many people were whispering about the bride-to-be. But between the lines, their words held two meanings. First, that Miss Rivers was stunningly beautiful, but unfortunately frail. Second, though the Green family wasn't short on money, marrying into the now declining Rivers family, regardless of the girl's beauty, felt like a loss on their part. For some reason, George felt a sudden urge to look at the stage. Maria was, once again, dressed in a beautiful white gown. But this time, she looked completely lifeless. Like a carefully dressed-up doll, hollow and stiff, with no spark behind her eyes. He couldn't help but think of that scorching summer day. The children's voices had been pure and angelic. And the girl at the piano, gentle and quiet, had smiled peacefully even when relegated to the back of the photo. Her eyes had been deep, bright, and still carried a gentle glow. That version of her bore no resemblance to the lifeless puppet now on stage. When David lowered his head to kiss her, George instinctively turned away. With work growing busier, he rarely thought about the girl he'd met only twice. But during the occasional family gatherings, his cousins, especially the girls, would sometimes mention her. "She's really pitiful." First her own family sold her off, and now the Green family boy doesn't even like her. Yeah, I heard it's been 2 years since the engagement, and that boy hasn't visited the Rivers house even once. Sounds like that wedding's not happening. Why did the Green family boy agree to the engagement in the first place? Maybe he was taken in by her looks? But then why ignore her afterward? George found himself hiding behind a low hedge, holding his breath. I heard from someone in the Green family that the boy did like her at first. That's why he agreed, even when the Rivers asked for a crazy dowry. But Miss Rivers, sickly as she is, has a scandalous private life. No way. I've met Maria many times while volunteering. She seems like a really good girl. Her older sister Anna accidentally let it slip, it must be true. What kind of scandal, though? Supposedly, she dated a bunch of boys when she was just 16 or 17. And even met up with a man at a hotel before the engagement. The Rivers had to spend a lot of money to keep it quiet until after the ceremony. Think about it. With the Green family boy's pride, how could he possibly stomach that? So after the engagement party, Maria was sent back to the Rivers home. The boy, for the sake of his image, kept quiet, but he's been disgusted with her ever since. Why not just break it off, then? Maybe, he really did like her. He just couldn't stand what she'd supposedly done. Torn up inside, I guess. I still don't buy it. You said she met someone in a hotel? Were there photos? I think so, let me go find them. George. Why are you here, cousin? Hello, uncle. George suddenly stepped through the bushes. The girls were startled and scrambled to their feet, greeting him nervously. His expression must have been terrible, because the once lively garden fell silent. Finished your homework? Or just sitting around spreading gossip and slandering others? The Jones family was known for its strict upbringing, especially with the girls. Casual gossip was one thing, but what they'd said today had crossed a line. If their elders heard about this, they'd likely invoke the family discipline. The girls were so frightened they nearly cried. George scolded them sternly until each one tearfully vowed never to speak ill of others again. Only then did he turn and leave. For days afterward, his mood remained dark. That weekend, he finally had some free time and accompanied his grandfather to church again. And there she was. Still wearing a simple dress, playing piano for the children. But she looked even thinner than before, her eyes always clouded with sorrow. She hit a wrong note, her face turning pale with panic as the music stopped. Someone approached to scold her harshly, and she sat there, head lowered, on the verge of tears. Yet in the next performance, she didn't make a single mistake. George couldn't stop looking at her. A strange thought crossed his mind, if those tears fell from her eyes, he would stand up and go to her. But she didn't cry. When he left, he circled back and quietly asked the priest to pass along a message. You look beautiful playing the piano in that dress. I hope you can be a little happier. Later. At a gala in Hong Kong, a sudden decision sparked a lifelong bond. The moment he unfastened the hidden clasp of her gown, he had already made up his mind. No matter the cost, he would take her away from David and marry her. He just hadn't expected that she would be the one to ask him first. She wanted to be his wife. His heart thundered in his chest, but he spoke with practiced calm. In 3 days, I want us to get a marriage certificate. When she agreed, he felt as if he were young again. As he gently tucked her hair behind her ear, she would never know how much effort it took to restrain himself. To not kiss her on the spot. To wait, until she could wear the most beautiful dress and go register their marriage with him. Little by little, he would bring back the Maria he remembered, the one etched in his memory as the most beautiful. Thankfully, he finally got his wish.